Wonderful. We have 27 participants now. All are in. So shall we start? Now it's 1 o'clock Finnish time and 7 o'clock in the evening Chinese time. So let's start the webinar. Dear participants, welcome to the 8th GINTL JoLII webinar. Today's topic is phenomenon-based learning. My name is Jenny Liu. I'm working in GINTL coordination team at the University of Helsinki. I'm the host of today's session. Today's session lasts about 1.5 hours. We will have 3 presentations. The presentation takes about 45 minutes. Then we will have the rest of the time for questions and discussion. We have invited 3 distinguished speakers from Finland and China. They are Professor Kirsti Lonka from University of Helsinki, Finland, Professor Mingquan Yang from Beijing Normal University, China, Dr. Sari Muhonen, class teacher from University of Helsinki, teacher training schools. She's also our teacher educator at the University of Helsinki. They all have extensive working experience and rich experience in research and teaching in the educational field. They will share their valuable insights about phenomenon-based learning with us today. Nico, were you? Yes, thank you. Before starting the presentation, there are some practical things to be mentioned. Please remember to mute your microphone during the presentation time. We will take a couple questions after each presentation if there are time left, or we will take questions in the end of the session. You can either ask questions in the chat box, or you can raise your hand. We will take the questions. We wish you have a pleasant and fruitful time with us together. Let's welcome our first speaker. Not this one, thank you. Let's welcome our first speaker, Professor Kirsti Lonka. Please allow me to give a couple minutes short introduction of Professor Kirsti Lonka with her extensive and impressive work. She has a wide range of research areas, including student learning, motivation, social-emotional learning, educational innovations. She's also a distinguished keynote speaker in many international and national conferences. She has published more than 150 peer-reviewed articles, publications. You know, she wrote this famous book, this Phenomenon Learning from Finland. It is available in several languages, including Chinese. So I don't talk anymore. Dear Professor Kirsti Lonka, now the floor is yours. Welcome. So now we give the presentation to Kirsti Lonka. Will you, Nico, stop the sharing so Professor Kirsti Lonka can share her slides and start her presentation? Thank you.
Now I need to change my screen. So now I think that you can see my slides.
Perfectly, yes.
Good.
Please. Yes, thank you.
When I'm talking today, I'm happy to share about the future of learning, where we are going. And you may know a lot about history and what's been going on in the Finnish education, but I'm focusing mostly on the recent developments and phenomenon-based learning and broad-based competencies. Dr. Jenny Niu kindly mentioned that my book has come out in Chinese language, and I'm very humbled and happy about that, in several other languages as well. And I'm especially happy that Chinese teachers have been fond of this book and found it useful. And I don't understand very much of this review of the book, but I was told that it was ranked one of the most favored book by 100 books by Chinese teachers. And that made me very, very happy. When we talk about education and why we are constantly developing our education, in Finland, we are reforming our curriculum every 10 years. Our recent curriculum reform took place 2016, and we have been also reforming our teacher education accordingly. What we want is collaborative knowledge creation, because we need active citizens who are creative and create together flourishing society and new ideas. What we are doing, we are changing our physical spaces of learning, our social settings, and developing our technologies. And during pandemic, it has become obvious that we have a lot to develop when it comes to our understanding of how to use technologies as an aid for learning. The current developments in Finland have included introducing interdisciplinary projects in Helsinki area in the form of phenomenon-based learning, but you can carry out these projects in many different ways. And there are also 7 broad-based 21st century skills or competencies that are integrated in the Finnish curriculum. And I already mentioned that we've had a social digital revolution in our education, which means that it's not only digitalization, but how our social practices have been changing over the years. We've also introduced coding, artificial intelligence, robotics, projects like phenomenon-based project, but also globally people talk about science, technology, engineering, arts, mathematics, STEAM, and maker culture. And all this means that actually external world is coming to the school and school is going out from the classrooms. I just briefly mentioned these Finnish 21st century competencies or skills. And the most important one, the king of all these skills, is thinking and learning how to learn. This kind of violet section, it's about cultural competence, interaction, and expression. And this is what we are doing. We are collaborating and communicating interculturally our ideas and finding the best practices together. We are also introducing other skills, ICT, working life skills, participating, building a sustainable future, helping students to take care of themselves and everyday life, and multiliteracy, which we mean that we need to understand how to express ourselves in various ways. For instance, Chinese opera is different from Western opera, and we need to understand the gestures and the music. And so multiliteracy is not only about text, but it's also about broader ways of expression. It's difficult, though, to introduce all this and put them in an ordinary class. And I would like to remind you that majority of Finnish schools are still very much subject matter based, and the education in schools is more than 90% subject matter based. And you can also carry out projects within a subject matter area. But we have found that it's kind of difficult to integrate these competencies and skills into subject matter-sliced, reality only. And that's why we have introduced these phenomenon-based or interdisciplinary projects as a part of Finnish curriculum. So there are only 1 or 2 projects per year. So we are not kind of changing everything, but it varies across schools. Some schools have more, are more engaged and kind of integrating more their subject matter teaching and learning here. But the idea is to make use of the natural curiosity of children and young people. They are usually supposed to define the phenomenon, not starting from individual subjects. There may be a given theme in the whole school, like forest, and then children come up with phenomena related to this theme, forest, that are of their interest. And teachers start thinking also what to cover, how to cover some subject matter topics through this project. And also integrating these 21st century skills there in a holistic way, if possible, in an authentic context. And as I said, there are 1 or 2 projects per year. The starting point is just different from subject matter-based thinking. So instead of thinking biology, chemistry, arts, sports, physical education, languages, we are starting from an interesting phenomenon like energy. And in Finnish schools, we've had a very student-centered approach, supporting well-being, soft skill. We have short school days and long holidays. I know that unlike in China, we have breaks between classes and children go outdoors playing, and the power distance is quite low. It's more like process-oriented than product or performance-oriented. We are not constantly testing. We don't have high-stake exams before the end of high school. And there are no dead ends. So everybody has the same school from age 7, actually from already age 5 to age 15. And it's free, doesn't cost anything. And there is no academic or vocational track you can change at any time of your career. And schools are decreasingly, when we build new schools, they look less like public spaces. They will support this kind of learning. And digitalization and social digital practices are kind of ubiquitously integrated in every aspect of the space. And there are differences among schools when it comes to what is the philosophy in the school. For instance, some schools want to specialize more in natural sciences, but they are implementing the national curriculum anyway. I show you some pictures of school in Espoo. Kindly, Principal Mikko Leppänen sent me some pictures from Viherlaakso school, so you can see some cutting edge, most kind of modern or latest school buildings and interior designs that we have. Here the children are collaboratively creating something by using digital technologies, and physical and social interaction is fused here. And also physical activity, handicraft, drama, arts, and music are mandatory subjects at school. So the learning spaces need to adjust to that as well. I had the pleasure of being a co-supervisor in Dr. Niu's thesis, and she was analyzing what should students now learn. We need to have the value basis of education. We have the cognitive objectives. We have social emotional objectives. We have generic future competencies. We need to adjust our assessment methods and also look at how to support different learners. In teacher education, we started to become hybrid ready already 10 years ago, when Helsinki was the world design capital of the world. We were developing with my team engaging learning environment for future teachers. And at the moment, I'm teaching there in a hybrid way. So we've done all kinds of experiments with our students there, phenomenon-based interactive playful learning in teacher education. And you need to have physical facilities that support this process. So all these different aspects of teaching and learning have been tested there. On the right down corner, you can see a project of animation where actually students are building things by their hands and then using their tablets to have an animation. At the moment, we are having the readiness to have hybrid classes or even online. But in my last week's hybrid class, we had future subject matter teachers. We had 170 online students and 100 who were present. So this is one way of integrating our teaching and learning. And my research, I also work in Africa. My research is in the nutshell here. This applies all age groups. How to promote the joy of learning. We know that we need a meaningful context for learning. We need to promote curiosity and interest of the children and adults. Optimal level of challenge in relation to experiencing competence and autonomy. Balancing challenge and competence is important. Sense of safety, also psychologically safe. Active role of the student, and constructive and encouraging social interaction. And these are the things that we emphasize also in teacher education. Before pandemic, I had the pleasure of visiting events in China, and this is from the camp conference where people who are interested in outdoor activities and outdoor learning were getting together. And if you're interested in our training programs and teacher education workshops and things like this, you can be in contact with HY Plus and Mr. Kimmo Karpijoki, who is their CEO. It's the continuing training center of University of Helsinki. I've been also a teacher on these courses. And you're going to get my presentation and my slides. And I hope that you enjoyed this presentation. And I'm really curious to hear about the experiences in China. Thank you very much for your interest.
Thank you so much, Kirsti, for your excellent presentation. I'm so proud and also so appreciate that you are my supervisor in my doctoral dissertation. I got so great support from you and really many valuable learnings from you. Thank you for your presentation. Maybe we take one question if some people have one urgent question need to ask Kirsti. Kirsti will be with us all the time. Sorry, I forgot to turn on my camera, but I can't do that. So Kirsti will be with us all the time in the end, so you can also ask the question in the end. So is there any urgent question coming for Kirsti?
And you may also put some questions in the chat.
Yes.
Yes. And I can reply you then.
Okay, so people are still thinking, digesting your your presentation. So we can start with the second presentation, second speaker from Beijing Normal University. So then we can have more questions, discussion in the end. Is that okay? So let me introduce Professor Yang Mingquan from Beijing Normal University. His research interest includes many aspects, including comparative education, curriculum pedagogic, and teacher education. He has published many books and almost 100 peer-reviewed articles, publications, long experience in the education and research field. So let's welcome our second speaker, Professor Yang Mingquan from Beijing Normal University from China. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to speak in the webinar. My topic is phenomenon-based learning from the perspective of Chinese educators. Sorry. In order to illustrate my point of view, I will explain it in 3 parts. Part 1, the proposed background of phenomenon-based teaching and learning. Part 2, Chinese scholars' understanding of phenomenon-based teaching and learning. And part 3, the practice of phenomenon-based teaching and learning in China. So about the background, I think, although there are different countries, they have the same problems in the field of school education. So firstly, as educators, we should answer the question, what kind of people to cultivate? Obviously, it's a common challenge of the international education today. Since the beginning of the 21st century, schools all over the world have been thinking about the same question: what skills should students develop to adapt to the future? In 2005, the European Union has released a report on core literacy, that is, key competencies, a European reference framework. In the framework, 8 core competencies are recommended to member states as a frame of reference for advancing lifelong learning and education reform. It contrasts the direction of new education in Europe Union and describes the common vision of educational progress. In 2002, Framework for 21st Century Learning was presented in the United States. It presents the student learning results and support system in the 21st century, including first, life and career skills. Second, learning and innovation skills. Third, information, media, and technology skills. In 2016, the research result of core literacy of Chinese student development are released. The term core literacy in China means preparing school students to be successful lifelong learner requires range of 21st century literacy that equip them with the necessary knowledge and skills to be confident and effective young people. So what kind of literacy should the students have in the new age? There are 6 kinds of literacy. That is humanity, scientific spirit, learning to learn, healthy life, responsibility, practice, and innovation. How does core literacy affect curriculum reform in China? In the 21st century, curriculum reform often happens in China, generally a minor change every 5 years and a major change every 10 years. So in April this year, Ministry of Education has announced a reversion of the compulsory education curriculum, which means schools in compulsory education stage will have to implement the new curriculum from this semester. So an important aim of this curriculum reform is to promote teaching transformation from the traditional teacher-centered teaching to student-centered teaching. You can learn about something in Chinese traditional teaching style. There's a video. Are our kids tough enough? Chinese school. This is a story about 5 Chinese teachers try to shake up the British education system. The outstanding characteristics of the traditional teaching method in China is that the teacher gives lectures and the students take notes and do exercises. This curriculum reform advocates some new teaching and learning methods. For example, active learning, inquiry learning, and cooperative learning. I think these learning methods embody the view of phenomenon-based teaching and learning. Now let's talk about Chinese scholars' understanding about phenomenon-based teaching and learning. Generally, there are 3 basic understandings about phenomenon-based teaching and learning. First, as a borrowed concept, Second, as an integrated of teaching mode. Third, as a complex learning model. Firstly, the concept of phenomenon-based teaching in China is borrowed from Finland. The term phenomenon is often used to describe things that occur in a real environment or experiences that can be observed and explored. In China, educators are more accustomed to calling it phenomenon-based teaching and learning, which highlights the importance of teaching and the role of teachers. Secondly, from the perspective of teaching, phenomenon-based teaching emphasizes a teaching mode that is, teachers guide students to solve a specific and real educational problem based on the real teaching situation. The teacher's design, organization, and guidance to the development of students' learning is crucial. Through literature research, we found that many people hold this view. For example, JoLII believes that phenomenological teaching is a kind of integrated teaching which spans many fields and different subjects according to the phenomena or topics that learners are interested in. Another scholar, Yong believes that phenomenological teaching is a kind of cross-disciplinary teaching. Third, from the perspective of learning, phenomenological learning pays attention to the whole learning method. A certain phenomenon defined by student is the core of exploration and links the academic knowledge students have mastered with real life. Learners must master how to discover new ways of problem solving through cooperation in order to train their problem solving skills. For example, Ling Cao believes that phenomenological teaching supports students' learning of subject knowledge, which only puts the learning of subject knowledge in the overall context of a phenomenon or theme, and promotes students' understanding of meaning. So based on the above analysis, we conclude that phenomenon-based teaching and learning has three characteristics. First, phenomenon-based teaching and learning aims at solving the historical problem of the separation between objective knowledge and students' real experience. Second, it takes the phenomena from the real world as the starting point and the center of teaching and learning, rearranges the related subject knowledge around the phenomena, and forms the curriculum model of multi-subject integration. Takes such curriculum modules as the carrier to carry on the teaching. Third, it generally embodies the characteristics of situation, authenticity, problematic, and constructiveness. At last, let me talk about the practice of phenomenon-based teaching and learning in China. The first is about field trip and experiential education. In 2016, the Ministry of Education of China issued propositions on promoting field study and travel of primary and secondary school students. In Chinese, 关于推进中小学研学旅行的意见. The document says that to help middle school and secondary school students love motherland, increase knowledge, focus on improving their sense of social responsibility, innovative spirit, and practical ability. This statement is in line with the goal of phenomenon-based teaching and learning. From then on, a large number of field trip and educational bases have been set up throughout the country. These photos reflect the children's study activities in the educational bases. As an old Chinese saying goes, read thousands of books, travel thousands of miles. 读万卷书，行万里路. The children has learned a lot from the field trip. The second is labor education and field work. In 2020, the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China and the State Council issued positions on strengthening labor education in universities, middle schools, and primary schools in the new era. China began to implement the 5 education integration policy, which consists of 5 aspects: moral education, intellectual education, physical education, and authentic education. So labor education curriculum was introduced in the revised edition of the compulsory education curriculum program. Schools under the leadership of the Communist Party of China require a combination of education and productive labor. This is the first time that a labor curriculum standard has been designed from the founding of People's Republic of China. And across the country, many primary schools and secondary schools offer a large number of labor education courses. The third is cross-subject theme learning. The new version of the compulsory education curriculum requires that at least 10% of class hours are devoted to cross-subject theme learning. It means that a learning theme should be abstracted from a real problem situation, which forms a specific learning task through the integration of subjects. So it meets the requirement of phenomenological teaching. There is a case to design and make energy saving and environmental protection cabin model. The real problem situation is that people need to save energy and protect the environment in living. And the learning task is to design and make a cabin model. The subjects involved are physics, mathematics, drawing, handcrafts, and so on. In order to accomplish this learning task, students need to conduct integrated learning and solve real problems. This is a case of phenomenon-based teaching and learning. So cross-subject theme learning pays attention to students' comprehensive learning ability, enhance the integration of curriculum content, and pays more attention to teacher-student interaction and cooperative learning. In a word, the phenomenon-based teaching and learning embodies the student-centered educational theory and helps to develop the students' core literacy, which is an important pursuit of educational reform in China today. That's all. Thanks for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Yang. Thank you for your excellent presentation. I feel the time goes so quick. I wish I could have hours listening to all the presentations. And since we don't have so much time now, so we will save all the questions in the end. I noticed in the chat that many good and important questions. Thank you for very thoughtful questions. So for Professor Yang, if you have some questions, you can put in the chat. We will discuss in the end. Thank you. Let's move to the third speaker. Let me have a short introduction to the third speaker from Finland, Sari Muhonen, my dear colleague, who have been co-teaching in several cases together. She is a very long experienced, very experienced teacher. She's a class teacher, has been teaching in several grades from the University of Helsinki teacher training schools. She's also a teacher educator, which means she also teaches student teachers how to teach. So she has both theoretical background, a very strong theoretical background, also very strong practical background from the schools. So she has been participated in this Finnish national core curriculum reforming, and she has written textbooks and teachers' guides, lots of materials for the schools, and she has lots of real-life examples with phenomenon-based learning. So I don't talk anymore. I give the floor to Sari Muhonen. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, my dear colleague Jenny. It's a real pleasure to be here today with you. And with Jenny, I have had the pleasure to visit also China and also giving workshop, as Professor Lonka has also been in your wonderful country. And also, I have to say that maybe my first time to China was maybe 20-something years ago. And I still remember my visits in the Great Wall. You have a wonderful history there. But now let's go to the slideshow. So let's see if I can manage it. Can you see it, Jenny?
Yes, I can see your slides. It's not a slideshow yet. Yes, perfect. Yes,
Okay.
working.
So I have many slides here. So previously, the professors told quite a lot about the theory behind this already. So maybe I quickly go through these, and you can have those slides later also. And I try to concentrate to the last part of the slideshow. Thank you, Jenny, for introduction. I skip these. Here is my school. Big teacher training school, a very big school in Finland, 1,000 students from 7 years old to the upper secondary school. And also we have all the time teacher trainees in our, a lot of them, both in subjects and also in primary classrooms. Also currently I have 2 in my classroom doing it here. Also Kirsti talked about this national core curriculum, which still is subject-based, but it mentions a strong value basis on holistic learning and child's agency and participation, for instance. And there is a lot very interesting and important issues there. And for me, it was wonderful to hear about your Chinese curriculum reform also. But I skip these slides, but maybe something to say that also always, whatever is the learning conception we are talking about, there is question of values. How do we think about assessment? How do we think about competencies? So this is a slide for that. And also Kirsti was talking about this transversal competencies or broad-based competencies, which are very central in our curriculum. Also in my everyday classroom with my teacher students and with my students, and you will see soon how is it in practice. So maybe one thing I want to raise from these slides, you can come back to this later, but I want to emphasize the student agency, the interaction, and the student's active role from the beginning till the end. It's not something you pick from just from the curriculum and then just test it, but you kind of try to formulate everything in a way that it is meaningful for the children. Well, how this is then done and which kind of practices. Phenomenon-based learning is one way of thinking about this. Or also, as Kirsti already mentioned, there was also in the since 70s in Finnish classroom, there has been very strong habits of integrating subjects, especially in classroom education, which means educating children from 7 to 12 years old, because in our classroom teacher system, also I teach all the subjects. So it's easy to make holistic learning happen in the classroom. But it's also doable in the subject teaching, but it means more effort to think how to do it differently. Here is one way to conceptualize. Lokomies is my colleague in Viikki Teacher Training School, to think about this phenomenon-based teaching and learning. And there are others, and also in Kirsti's book, there is wonderful ways to theorize this issue. But now to the practice. So here you can see the first graders short school days, normally from 9 to 2 or 9 to 1 or even less. And some classes are half classes. And even sixth graders have from 8 to 2 or 3. The days are quite short. But in the classroom education especially, the teacher can kind of formulate it in a way that holistic learning and long-term thinking processes are doable. And the teacher and the teacher educators have to, of course, set the scene. How can it be formulated suitable for learning? And over time, to remember that every student, whether it is subject-based or holistic, every student have unique needs. So how to see and answer these is something as a teacher you have to always take care of. And also during the process, it is sometimes that phenomenon-based learning has been criticized, that some magazines may write that children are left alone, but no, this is not the case. There is always need for feedback and feed forward and guidance and structuring the processes, the learning processes, and also evaluating together with the children the whole time. So kind of having the aims in mind, and the aims are made in collaboration with the children, and everything bases all the time to the curriculum. So the teacher have to have a strong knowledge of that document. So here you will see some examples. Time is very short, but I try to tell very briefly, so briefly that I can. So of course, how to choose or frame the phenomenon. And also, of course, in best case, it somehow raises in the classroom, or the teacher may facilitate finding a phenomenon that is based to the curriculum. And then on questions in the classroom are made, and different ways of raising these kind of questions together and in collaboration is there are different techniques and things. If question walls or use of ICT can be used here if you want, but also together then when the phenomenon is found, for instance, it could be, as Kirsti already said, war, or which is very topical at the moment, sadly, how it is, but children are interested in this issue also. It's a real life phenomenon, very sad phenomenon, but it needs to be addressed also. Or pure water, or all these kind of issues. So then starting to planning the process together. And as I told, these aims are formulated together to get the students engaged from the beginning to the end. Here is a picture from my classroom. There are 3 teacher students at the moment, and there are 2 classes. So our curriculum says that different age groups is good to have in collaboration. And here we are planning and making groups. And in the groups, they start making own questions and having preliminary ideas, and perhaps talking about their own experience, previous experiences. And here the question was pure water, which was facilitated by the teachers, because we also had collaboration partners in Kenya, in Nairobi, and we had a collaboration where we used ICT competencies. So here we chose a sustainable development goal that we were studying in 2 countries and with several students in several age groups. And it covered very many of those 7 core competencies. So how the development and production phase then goes when the phenomena is found and agreed? Well, we also have to have the aims in mind all the time, and central concepts can be defined. And teachers' teaching is not forbidden, of course. So maybe there is some places that a teacher really teaches something new if it's needed, but they can also learn it by themselves, facilitated by the teacher. But anyhow, this takes most of the time, collecting data, getting understanding in a collaboration, using ICT in collection and also in when making it visible what have been found. But engagement, students are very engaged and they really love when they can have, when they can choose their ways and they can concentrate for the longer periods. They really hope for these phenomenon-based learning projects. So also there can be some kind of, there is piste means kind of places where they are to be learning about some content that teacher really wants them to be learned. So maybe some parts are kind of more teacher guided for everyone, and maybe some other parts children are finding themselves more, but still the teacher is always there helping, facilitating. They can choose places, they can read, there are different ways of searching for knowledge. But here you can also see, although I have blurred the faces, they are very engaged. They can kind of choose the ways. Oh, sorry. My time is getting limited, so I got, and of course, learning in the nature is very important, and searching knowledge from there. So, for instance, here is pictures from this phenomena was shapes in Kenya and Finland. So there are shapes everywhere when you start having your phenomena glasses in your face. You see shapes in trees, in arts, in stories, in music. So, and each group can kind of specialize in different parts. Here are shapes. We made some kind of artistic work in an African style, and also some mail from there. Also conceptualization still is there. And then the final phase, when they have been working a lot in groups, having the freedom to choose where they specialize, guided by the teacher always. So there is a production and outcome phase. So coming back to the aims, maybe they are visible all the time in the classroom, and they often are, as are the steps when we go it through. So they have to use those concepts when they present. They all may present their knowledge differently. They can choose. And here, for instance, they have been planning how we'll plan and rehearse the collaborative outcome. And here they have been also, you can see there are some phases how they did evaluate their group work. And here they are presenting. And while for instance, group yellow have been presenting, the group green is evaluating according to the aims and the use of central concepts. For instance, this pure water issue, this is related to that. So they are very engaged. And here is a wrap, for instance, they made from the pure water. Here is a game they made and presented. And here is a use of ICT. They made Kahoot by themselves. And this playfulness is something that we really want to see in our classrooms. Of course, it gives joy. But of course, the one interesting question for me is how to start, and how would you like to use these kind of things in your classrooms? And I also have seen that in China there are many wonderful integrating teaching experiments already. So, but if you want to really kind of follow phenomenon-based teaching and learning steps, so how to engage, how to relate the curriculum and children questions and so on are very important questions for my part. But here is some further reading and share from my part, and I will give back for Jen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sari. There's so many important, good examples from your student, from your class. I didn't feel the time goes so quick. We can listen longer. Thank you so much. And I want to thank all the distinguished speakers. I would like to call you all on the stage so we can open the space for discussion and questions. I noticed that many good questions already in the chat box. Now it's your great time, so you can ask directly from our distinguished speakers. So if I look the chat, or you can just raise your hand or unmute yourself, start to ask questions. That would be wonderful. This is the best opportunity to ask. So if before you start ask, maybe I check the chat box some questions. So in the chat box, there is, I think, Ying Xie asked, thank you for your presentation. May I ask, what's the relationship between phenomenal education and outdoor education, which you just mentioned? I think Kirsti give a short reply. Would you like to open a little bit here for all participants? Thank you.
Actually, this showed nicely in the last presentation by Sari how outdoor activities, excuse me, can be either as an authentic context for a phenomenon-based project or a topic of study. You have a phenomenon like forest and you want to make inquiries there and you want to understand flowers or birds or how different phenomena. So that's why outdoor activities can be closely related to phenomenon-based learning, and also for healthy habits, like what is important in Chinese approach is healthy living. So fresh air and exercise and physical education and art education. So it's a great authentic context for learning.
Thank you. Thank you. And I also noticed there are some very good compliment to you, Kirsti, that they said that you have done great speech. Thank you very much. Very good book. Very in-depth discussion, phenomenon education in your book. So let's have another question coming. One question, how to take educator difference level of the knowledge and skill to find the bottleneck of phenomenon education in practice? I try to understand the question.
After my presentation? Maybe?
Yes, I was wondering, Elena, do you want to elaborate a little bit this?
Can you hear? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Elena.
Great. So actually, I'm the colleague of Elena, and I'm also from China. So here is the thing is that the one we are trying to implement phenomenon education, not only in the primary school, but also in the kindergarten there. And we noticed one challenge is from the teacher's mindsets and also the education background of the teacher. Because Finnish, we have such a holistic system of building this knowledge equip this knowledge, phenomenon education, children-centric from the university and master. Once they graduated, they have all the tools they need in their head when they go to the classroom. But for example, let's say China, we are still in a very, as a professor Yang says, that we are borrowing this concept, we are learning. So our teacher are still quite a lot of the base are missing. And then therefore, when we are, for example, we have one discussion case with our teachers that the teacher's idea today, we are teaching as English, we are teaching English also. So we are teaching animals, okay? But then the kids start to be looking very concentrating by the phenomenon outside the snowing. The snow came. So for this case, the teacher was asking like, should we keep on focusing on teaching what we should teach today as an animal, or should we change the whole subjects to the kids and take them out to play the snow and start to discuss about snow? So there are, I think with Finnish teacher, there are a lot of good ways to how to combine or to switch or how to do things, but with Chinese, they will feel this is like definitely a yes or no, choose or, you know, do or not do, you know, such things. So these kind of things, I mean, it's happening all the time. How to get the class started, how to get the students involved. And during the path, there's a lot of like divert directions and how the teacher is able to combine them all in back. And these are so important. These are something teachers are missing that capability when you cross the culture. And that part, the core competence, how this phenomenal education can support in the training part. That was my question, basically.
Thank you for your good question. I noticed Sari has held up her hands. Do you want to comment, or other can also join the
Yes,
discussion?
I would be happy to, because I really thank you for this example of having an impulse, learning impulse from the child. And I really truly believe that that is the key to the students' engagement when they are listened. And so, because anyhow, if you see the snow, and there is many possibilities to talk about English about this also. So when the teacher really has the strong confidence in her teacher's professionality and knows the curriculum well, so she can say that, okay, well, we can leave the animals for this. And yes, it is definitely wonderful. It's snowing. So let's go to feel the snow and have some vocabulary. How do you say that word? I need some English supervision. So let's make it meaningful. And then we can talk about the animals later and how they prepare for winter or something like this. So strong teacher identity is something that we are very proud in Finland, and we try to focus on that. And maybe that's something that you are talking about there. Thank you for this example.
I noticed Kirsti have something to say.
Yes, I could add that also it's creativity also from teachers' part. Like you can, for instance, continue the topic and let's go outdoors and play the animals. Like if you're a rabbit, how do you react to the snow? And if you're a cow, how do you react? And if you're a bird, what happens? And also we need to remember that we don't need to be huge subject matter experts because we all have our high school studies behind us, and in Finland at least it's quite general, so people know the basics of biology and they know about many things, and you need to understand to go to the level of the child. You don't need to give a scientific lecture, but you can be playful and creative and a role model. Because I've asked my students, what is the most difficult sentence that the teacher cannot say, which is very difficult to say for a teacher. The most difficult sentence is, yeah, Professor, you know, the most difficult sentence is, I don't know. And then the even more difficult is to say, I don't know, but let's find out together. And is there anybody here who knows? So that is the kind of supporting agency of the children to give a role model that I don't know everything. I know a lot. My students know that I'm an expert in psychology, but they very often help me with technology or statistics or something specific. And it's very empowering that the children can also be active agents of learning.
Thank you, Kirsti, to share your thoughts. Yes, so it's very difficult for teacher to say, I don't know, let's find out together. We always appear we are the expert. We know everything. Yes, Sari has something to say.
Yes, thank you very much for this comment. I think that is the core, of course, when you have a strong tradition of subject-based teaching, And it's not to say that that's anything wrong, but it is something new to think about. And also in Finland, we have a very strong, especially in the upper grades. And there is this testing also. I saw a question in chat that what to do with this. That this is also something that affects, of course. So if there is strong need for teach for the test, so maybe thinking about the whole landscape. So what is good for Chinese education? But I think these small steps are good. We have been talking with Jenny about just take a small step, maybe collaborate with a English teacher and a music teacher and do something together and find out maybe, oh, this worked and this was not so good. So maybe kind of having this kind of small steps to think about. And but teacher education is always one of the main key things, I think.
Thank you for your excellent discussion. It's promoting people thinking how, as a teacher educator, what we should do and what we can do and how to help our teachers, student teachers. I noticed there are so many good questions in the chat box. I combined two questions together. There is an often asked question, also important question is people often ask, what's the differences between the project-based learning, inquiry-based learning, phenomenon-based learning? I also noticed Kirsti already provided some very extensive answers there. So maybe I just put the question out, then let's talk a little bit. What do some of you would like to talk a little bit more about this? Or you're muted, Kirsti.
I was putting in the chat that
Yes.
Phenomenon-based learning is obviously one form of inquiry-based learning, where but in science education you've had inquiry-based learning is quite typical, and there it's very often within a subject like physics. But just starting from a larger phenomenon and doing a cross-disciplinary inquiry. And also project-based learning, I've been looking at that in engineering, for instance. It's very product-oriented. You need to carry out a project and you need to plan it and execute it. And whereas phenomenon-based project is more a creative process in a way, that you are learning subject matter knowledge and this transversal future competencies through a project. In medicine, I've been training medical teachers to use problem-based learning, which is also relative. There are similar aspects, but it starts from a patient case. So it starts from a patient who is having a problem with stomach, and then you are integrating anatomy and physiology and clinical studies and everything there. So phenomenon-based learning has just a concept that is more open-ended and more integrated and more holistic in nature than these examples.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. There is a question. I don't read the whole sentence, but I only read the question. Where you think that would be difficult to practice phenomenon-based learning or teaching because there are different teachers teaching different subjects? I think Sari has touched briefly about this topic because there are different subject teachers. Where you think it would be difficult to practice this phenomenon-based learning? Sari, you want to say something?
Yeah, maybe I can continue a little bit. For instance, it's our school. It is, of course, most easy in the classroom teaching because we have teach all the subjects ourselves. But I'm also a music subject teacher. So if I would do something in the upper grades, so it would need some thinking through. And of course, in the core position is the principal. So if the principal is wanting the change, so then there should be some planning together how this can be arranged. So for instance, that the principal would make maybe a block, maybe 1 week, that something is doing very differently, or maybe it would be during 2 months some period of time, every teacher is somehow collaborating. It's somehow coordinated from the principal. So otherwise it is very difficult, but always something can be done. So teachers can collaborate, I think, in every country. They can collaborate in just by discussing and doing something small together. So that is at least something that you can always start from and see if it feels meaningful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. There is another question. Any suggestions to balance the pressure to get higher scores for the students from paper tests or paper-based tests, or slow down the teaching pace to enjoy the phenomenon-based teaching? Kirsti, have something to say?
In my, I started as a memory researcher, and there is a lot of research on problem-based and showing that students learn the facts as well as during lectures, but they just remember them longer and they can also put them in practice. So it's a misunderstanding that you would not learn detailed information. If you are very detailed studying a project, a phenomenon-based project where you're also teaching some aspects of physics, and in an ordinary classroom, it's not an authentic context. But if you have a meaningful context, it's kind of helps you to remember these things, because you get your memory works much better in that case. So people have this opposition, like facts against understanding, but understanding always fosters also remembering. And that's what I'm trying to tell in my book also, about what we have learned from educational psychology and from psychology research.
Yes, this book. Can you see it from my camera? I strongly suggest to get one of the book. You can see my notes already. I'm reading it just beside my desk. Yes.
Chinese version. Much more affordable.
And maybe if I can continue to this very good comment that Kirsti just said, that it's just a question of this learning conception that, for instance, in Finnish curriculum is very strongly it should be student originated, or somehow that they are active. So kind of if we have a conception still that it's the teacher who tells and then tests. So this is something in the values and in the learning conception that, and also connected to teacher education and about discussing and inventing and experiencing, and it takes time. So, but anyhow, when they are experiencing, for instance, learning a new matter about the forest by doing it in this phenomenon-based learning ways, still they can learn very deep conceptual knowledge, but it has to be somehow structured by the teacher that it really is happening. And then if the test is needed, then the test is given. But mostly in my classroom, for instance, I can see what is happening. So I don't need the test to see if they know it, because it will be shown in their working and in their presentations.
Thank you, Sally. And Sally has something to say.
Yes, and I think this is wonderful, and all of us also in Finland all the time we try to find more and better ways, and I think it's wonderful that you think about this way. And it also takes time, and also it needs to have the teacher education, as I know that you do it very well in China. In fact, I think you have very efficient teacher training professionally for everyone. So having own experiences so that the teachers can also experience the difference between of listening a lecture or having a workshop when they really can oh, this is how it feels when I can really decide, not just receive. So I think that is one of the core questions to find it meaningful.
I have one question for you, Sally. I think it's on your slides. The person is asking, can I see the phenomenon-based education involves the ESD, education for sustainable development, or just as the slides show that ESD is just a topic of phenomenon education as the outdoor education? I guess the meaning might be related to your slides about this sustainable development, how you use it in your phenomenon-based learning.
Well, I use it in many different ways, and also children use it. Sometimes even they say that, hey, this belongs to that. We have, of course, it in our classroom all the time, the sustainable development goals, as we have those core competencies in our classroom. So these are something that are tools, but also maybe topics or part topics in our teaching and learning processes. So many times there are, for instance, climate change is something that I teach 6th graders at the moment. They are very interested in. Naturally, it's a phenomenon that they are interested in, but it is also a sustainable development goal from United Nations. So, but when it comes from the children, so it's easy for me to, okay, let's see from here and from curriculum, and then tying it all together.
Thank you so much. I noticed we have many questions coming. Here is one more question from Thailand. Ah, yes, that's the Chinese version of the book. I have only the English version. Yes, wonderful. There is one. We have one question for Sari. I think in your example slides, you showed students give assessment to each other, many kind of different assessment method. So the question is, can you give one example how students involved in the assessment? I know there's plan model where I guess it's this Lendogone model where kindergarten kids can use color to comment how well they think they learned skills. How is a primary school students? How teachers are evaluated by school in primary school in Finland? So very long questions.
Yes, I think it's very interesting one also. So traditionally, it's the teacher who has been assessing the child if he remembers or not. But now the time is different and learning conception is different. So also of course, the teacher is the one who gives the final number. Also in Finland, at upper grades, you give numbers. So of course, we cannot forget this. But during learning process, you can engage children in many ways to assess how they are going towards the goals. There are so many things. It can be even a small thing, showing by a finger, very good, well, almost succeeding. Well, I don't understand anything. It can be a very quick one, or it can be a paper thing. It can be used by the forms questionnaire. There are so many multiple ways when you start thinking, and also teachers are very creative when they start thinking about this. And also they can give feedback to their and feed forward, so helping forward in the learning process to the peer, from peer to peer. That is something. And also in our books, Jenny told I have been doing this Finnish reading books. So for instance, in these teaching materials, there are some things. Ask some feedback from your peer, and then they change the books. So it can be also facilitated by the teaching materials, these kind of issues. So there are many ways for this, but very good question. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good question. The assessment is part of learning in the process. So very good. We discussed about that. So I look through the very excellent comments, compliments to the speakers. And there is one is from Elena, how to equip our teachers to have the motivation for adopting a new teaching method, like a student center or phenomenon-based new learning teaching method, how to help our teachers? Kirsti have some comment.
The best way is usually to help them to understand how people learn. Because if you understand that even listening silently can be active or passive, you can just try to store information, you can start kind of trying to understand. Then you start realizing the next step is somehow to intentionally activate the minds of the students, and they start putting the learning in the center and the ideas in the center. Also changing approaches to assessment, because assessment has two functions: to control and to see what people already know, but the other one is the assessment should always promote learning. Because when I'm writing something, I'm also organizing my thinking. So I'm learning when I'm writing. I'm explaining it for myself. So these kind of conceptions of learning and knowledge that I've been doing research about that for a long time. And there is the idea that if a teacher sees, understands remembering as storing an information, then they are not motivated, and then they start thinking it's just to feed in some information. But when we understand how brain works and how our mind works and memory works, we understand that remembering is constantly creating new connections. And I cannot transfer my knowledge to you. It's impossible, because you don't have my mental models and my understandings. You have your understandings, and teachers need to understand that children understand things differently because of the developmental psychology as well. And also, one thing that motivates me is teaching is much more fun. It's very boring to repeat same things year after year after year, and people are just sleeping there. But when you start doing things together with students, it's so refreshing. And you want to share that experience for everybody, that learning can be fun and you can enjoy learning and it can be effective. And I've been in medical education for 10 years, and their patients die if doctors don't learn. So it's really serious. And the medical people have been the first one to put in practice all these active learning methods, because they really need to learn effectively. And what I'm trying to teach is how to learn effectively. And not only to learn the facts, but also how to think and how to put the facts in use. Because it's not enough if teachers know these theories of teaching and learning. They need to also do how to put them in practice. And that's what Sari is doing. And they're doing excellent work in our university training school to put these ideas in practice. I know lots of my colleagues, I know lots of professors who are not at all interested in learning. They are not at all interested in teaching in a phenomenon-based way. And they think it's a waste of time because they have a different conception of learning. And they are I'm saying that you are not teaching biology, you are teaching students to learn psychology or biology. So this is maybe the motivation, and the brain, how human brain works is universal. So in Thailand, people are not different from China or Finland. Everywhere, the mechanisms of learning are pretty similar. So we are just trying to follow the natural way of learning to make it less boring and more engaging.
Yes, fully agree. Sally has something to say.
Yes, I agree totally. And as we know in ourselves, if we go back in our history, the things we remember is actually the ones that we have really experienced something. And I very rarely experience just by listening a lecture. No, I remember things where I had maybe a cognitive conflict. Huh? What is this? Or maybe I was collaborating with another one, or we were doing something, went out of the classroom, or we invented something, or we had a real problem. And so kind of active reactions and active doing to really remember and understand, I think it's very meaningful.
Thank you so much. The time is running so quick. I got lots of good comments from the chat. They said, thanks to Kirsti mentioned that your teacher cannot transfer knowledge to students. That's a very nice way to say that. So students need to construct their own learning with their prior knowledge, what they already know, and with the new information. So we only have 5 minutes left. I would like to give all the speakers great thanks for your great presentation and excellent discussion. I also want to thank all the participants. So many good questions, wonderful discussion together. And there was a last question, maybe addressed to our organization, how we share the slides with you together. So Nico, can you put our GINTL webpage link there, so you can have all the information, because the session is also recorded. You can find more information from GINTL webpage, and I will collect the slides from our excellent speakers. I think by now I want to thank you all and for your active participation, for our distinguished speakers. We are so good learning community together with excellent questions, presentations. Thank you all. And we have coming sessions, so be aware of in our page. So we have more sessions coming in the future. Thank you so much for your contribution.
Thank you. It was a great pleasure and honor to be here today and learn so much also from the colleagues here.
Thank you. We learned so much, so many new ideas. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for everyone. It was a pleasure to be here. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.